Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we preview the Detroit Lions Sunday Night Football matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs. First, we'll hit on major storylines since the Lions' last victory. Then we'll take a closer look at the Chiefs. This includes hearing from a reporter who covers Kansas City. Plus, we'll share insights of our own. That and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
Hi, this is Corey Schlesinger with the Detroit Lions, and you are listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is Coach Jerry Angers, former Michigan High School Coach of the Year. He was also named Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions. He is the scouting and training director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, the season keeps moving, and here we are again. Good to have you here.
Yeah, glad to be here, especially talking about Detroit sports. Go Tigers.
There we go. Joining both of us to talk Detroit sports, be it Lions or Tigers, is the senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. That is the sports writer of the year for Community Newspaper Holdings Incorporated, James Cook. James, good to have you here too.
Good to be here. 9 runs. Javi Baez. How about that?
There you go. If that adrenaline doesn't keep you up and get you excited in the morning, you know what else might? Roaster Jack Coffee. The Roaster Jack Coffee Company is out of Traverse City, Michigan. And folks, since 1999, they have been roasting premium beans from small farms around the world. They are fresh to order just for you. And the only thing better, I hear, than great coffee is great coffee with a discount. If you visit roasterjack.com and you use the code LIONS, you'll get 20% off your next order. Roaster Jack Coffee Company, be a hero, brew great coffee, and go Lions. Okay, guys. Last week's win, kind of a weird feeling for a lot of people. A lot of us couldn't just wait to get out of that game. But there's a lot to dissect from that game. There's a few more things to touch on from that, and then some things that have taken place since that game. But first, we got to talk about Terrion Arnold, Coach, because, he's gotten a lot of flack this year. And some of it, that there is some deserved criticism. I'm not saying there's not. But I almost feel like, we talked about it in our last show, it might be overblown. And there was a big stat that you and I chatted about after the show last week about Terrion Arnold in that Bengals game. You want to talk about that?
Well, I mean, just the numbers. Look at the numbers from when he was in and when he wasn't in. Look at the completions when he was in and when he wasn't in. Again, everybody is biting on these 5-yard penalty that he has. But, the guy's a baller. What did we give up, 21 points when he wasn't on the field last week?
That's exactly it, right? No touchdowns when he was on the field, 21 after he left the game.
Yeah, and I don't understand why they're attacking this guy. This guy is a true Lions player. I saw a thing today, between the injury and him playing over it and between some issues at home within his family, and it's the guy's balling out for us. And God, leave him alone. It's really frustrating, and I think James may have talked about it, or one of you guys may have talked about the comparison between him and Snead, who the Chiefs got rid of a couple years, or let him walk a couple years ago. Let's look at all their PFF scores if you want to go, or next gen scores, and Arnold's as good as any of them. So leave him alone. He's a second-year player. Wish him luck.
Yeah, again, I see a player that still has a lot of room to grow. He's made a lot of mistakes for sure, but I also think sometimes you got to look at the whole body of work, and sometimes we're only just looking at the highlights or the lowlights on TV. James, anything you want to throw in there about Terrion? We'll get a little bit more of his status later, but any thoughts on his play?
No, pretty much just what Jerry said, and kind of the same with Manu too. People are just bagging on him after, because he had a couple of bad reps against one of the best defensive ends in the NFL. And I'm like, did we not expect Taylor Decker to get beat a couple of times? I mean, pretty much surely he would have had he played. So I mean, was Manu disastrous? No. Was he great? No. Was Tate Ratledge great in his first game? No. And look at him just a few games later. So I think kind of the same thing with Manu. I think people expect a little bit too much of some of these young draft picks. And if they aren't a Pro Bowl player on day one or snap one, then they just start bagging on him.
Well, in Manu, I think, the Lions weren't expecting to use him this quickly, this soon. I think they wanted him next year. And that said, I think, Coach has already talked about something off air here. I think there's a game plan where you're going to see Manu get a little extra help this next week. And we're going to get into that. And we think that's going to make a big difference on the offensive line. All three of us have kind of talked about that. Before we get to that, James, you got something else about the offense that's kind of made the rounds on social media.
Yeah, the folks that were kind of questioning whether John Morton and the whole changing of the coordinators. The Lions have scored the most points in franchise history through 5 weeks this year. More than any other team in Lions history, including the Ben Johnson ones. So much for those worries about John Morton.
That is crazy. I did see that stat, and the Lions last year with 564 points was the fourth most points scored by a team in NFL history. And they said this current squad is actually on pace for second place, I believe, right now. The current record is 606 points. Peyton Manning, the 2013 Denver Broncos. Second, Tom Brady and the 2007 Patriots had 589. Now, those were both in 16-game seasons, of course, but this would put the Lions on pace for just ahead of that. Now, James, Coach hates it when we talk about these type of stats because they are so meaningless. So I've got to bring this home. There's a good thing and a bad thing about these stats. The good thing is both of those teams, the Manning and Brady teams, they made the Super Bowl. And Brady's team went undefeated. But that also tells you what's coming next. Both teams lost the Super Bowl. And because some people will tell you, defense wins what, Coach?
Championships.
Yes, but Dan Campbell will tell you complimentary football wins championships. And that's what these Detroit Lions are built on. So, you know what? There's going to be days the offense isn't beautiful, but the whole team together might just pull something off. So that's the spin I'm going on with this one, Coach. You got anything you want to weigh in on that with?
No, and you know what, and I love the spin, and that's all good stuff because the defense, the special teams, and the offense is complementary of each other. The other thing too is we've talked about this. People are keep saying, "Oh, Lions haven't beaten anybody yet. They haven't beaten a team with a winning record." The point is, the good teams beat the teams they are supposed to beat handily, and that's what the Lions are doing. And yeah, they're gonna stumble, guys, the rest of this year. They're probably gonna lose a game or two. If they don't, oh my God, look out. But Brady was 17-0. It didn't get him a Super Bowl victory. So I'm sure the Lions will take a couple of those losses with a grain of salt and just get that move on.
Well, yeah, and hey, the Lions have a real tough schedule this year. We're 4-1 though. Yeah, we haven't beat a team with a winning record. Technically, we haven't played a team with a winning record. And so that's even crazier at this point. James, you got some other insights, maybe some stuff about Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, well, the Chiefs haven't beat anybody with a winning record either. And everybody is talking about them, how they're one of the best teams, and give them their due. They are a very, very good team. For being 2-3, they are an excellent opponent. I think Patrick Mahomes has to kind of watch out because the Honolulu flu is rapidly spreading to opposing quarterbacks because Lamar Jackson got hurt the week after he played the Lions. Joe Flacco got benched by Cleveland the week after he played the Lions, and Jake Browning got benched the week after he played the Lions, and then Joe Flacco got traded to the Bengals.
Well, yeah, and that's the big thing right there. Speaking of Joe Flacco, all right, so he got traded to the Bengals. Well, you know what he did a couple weeks ago? As a Cleveland Browns quarterback, he beat the Green Bay Packers. And I got to tell you, I'm a big Joe Flacco fan this week because the Bengals are playing the Packers. And I don't know if Flacco's going to be starting that game. I would presume he is. I mean, Minnesota picked up Josh Dobbs like 2 days before a game. Heck, Baker Mayfield went and got signed like the day before a game for the Rams and played. And if you got Joe Flacco, you're going to put him in there and just see what you can do. And if the Bengals can beat the Packers, it'll be the first time a quarterback has beaten the same team twice with two different teams in the same season. So that would be pretty. I would love that stat to happen.
We'd love to see that happen. And we talked last week about how cheap the Bengals are. I saw a photo of Joe Flacco getting on a plane, just a regular commercial flight just sitting in an economy class with the regular people to go to Cincinnati.
He's a working man's quarterback at this point in his career, man. So
He's already been labeled to start. So,
he
Yeah,
has. All
yeah,
right,
I have heard
awesome.
they said he's going to start.
quick question. I know this is about the Lions. How good are the Buffalo Bills? Pretty good.
Really good.
We
Okay,
think so.
Well, they barely beat the Ravens. They beat the Jets, the Dolphins, and the Saints, and they've lost to the Patriots.
Yep. Heard that too.
There's
So
not there's not very many good teams in the league this year because nobody's beating anybody with a winning record.
yeah, well, maybe we need some more winning records out there. What happened to all these great matchups we were supposed to have early in the season on the NFL schedule? So. All right, let's turn our attention to the Lions a little bit. Let's look at the injury report and transactions. 7 guys did not practice. That would be Terrion Arnold, Zach Cunningham, Decker, Joseph, Raymond, St. Brown, and Vaki. Branch was limited, and drum roll, please. Aleem McNeil, full practice, baby. Yeah. All right, so Terrion Arnold, he did get a second opinion on the shoulder, and everyone's super excited. But Coach Campbell said today, yeah, he got a second opinion. But I'm totally like paraphrasing and reading between the lines. But it doesn't mean he's magically healed. No, Campbell didn't say that. But that's kind of what he was alluding to. We still don't know what the outcome's going to be. Hopefully it means he's out, a handful of games, 4 to 6 weeks, something that he comes back this season. But we still don't know that at this point. So, James, what are some of your thoughts on where Terrion Arnold sits and what that looks like? Let's go with that. Then we'll get into the transactions.
Yeah, I think Campbell's terminology went from a long time to a while for Terrion Arnold. So a little bit of a change, a little more optimistic, I think. I've heard people say that he could be back within a month. But nobody's saying exactly what the injury is. Supposedly the second opinion was better than the first, as opposed to that. So they said that whatever it is, he can do some strengthening stuff to help it out and hopefully get back to the field sooner than was initially thought.
All right, why don't you go through the transactions for us? Because a couple things took place here, and then we can weigh in more on Terrion and McNeil and kind of how things are looking overall for the offense and defense.
Yeah, the Lions put Khalil Dorsey on injured reserve. And then using that spot on the roster, activated Dan Skipper to the 53-man roster. They also signed because they moved Skipper up from the practice squad. They signed Arthur Mallett. Sorry, I even looked up how to pronounce it, and then I got it wrong the first time. Mallett, a cornerback who is kind of a nickel back, but. And then the Lions tried to sign Michael Davis, who was another veteran cornerback, but the New Orleans Saints apparently offered him a guaranteed 53-man spot, and he took that instead of a practice squad spot from the Lions.
Yeah, apparently they had offered him a practice squad spot, then the Lions did, so then they upped the ante and raised it to a full roster spot. So there's some moves there, bring another guy to the defensive backfield. We're expecting Rock Ya-Sin. We're expecting Amik Robertson as the starters this week. But Dorsey being out, 2 guys, is another depth hit there, Coach. So we know that Reed's on IR. We don't know what's going on with Terrion yet. I would presume a trip to IR is coming for him. But again, we don't really know. We do know Dorsey's on IR. So they're getting a little thinner down there. What's some of your interpretation of the secondary and what it looks like right now?
Well, we talked about it at the beginning of the year. We're really deep. We're really deep during preseason, but I think we've lost 4 of our top 5 so far. But there's guys coming in. You take Nick Whiteside for instance. He balled out. We were like, God, he's got a shot of making the team, and then they didn't sign him. Didn't even sign him on a practice squad, but now he's back. So I think they're putting these. Like with this Mallett, right? There you go. I think with getting guys like that, they're putting guys into people that they can use for practices and with Rock and excuse me, in the depth that we have, we got guys that can play corner, we got guys that can play nickel, we got guys that can play safety. Are we going to go two high safeties and things like that? So I think they're fitting those pieces in to get people into situations. We know how many different packages they run. And last week, who was it? Who went in that we just signed last week?
Trey Flowers.
Trey Flowers, another big guy, and he ended up playing, and I think they had to direct him 3 times to which side to line up on. So again, that's what we do. That's what the Lions do. Next man up. I know people are tired of hearing that, but that's what it looks like. So, but with Maddox and Rock, I think we're in great shape.
Yeah, and Rock playing, getting more looks at outside defensive back is huge, and that's a name we floated around for a couple of years. James and I have talked about him in the past, and having him start out there, you have a guy who's played a lot of football, and that's in the NFL, and so and then what we saw from Amik Robertson down the stretch last year gives you so much confidence in him, and then Maddox, another vet, you could probably slide him into the nickel spot, is what we're thinking. Mm-hmm. The depth does take a hit with all this, and there's going to be some testing, but also that's where Alim McNeill comes in. If the defensive line can get there a little bit quicker, because, Coach, you did a bunch of advanced analytics, and they're getting a lot of pressure, but their pressure isn't coming quite as quick as other teams' pressure comes. And so that might be something that will help counteract some of that, James. What are you seeing from the secondary and or maybe some things on the moving roster spots?
Yeah, if they do promote Millette to the roster, one thing that he does, he plays mostly kind of a nickel role, but he also is a very good blitzer from the nickel package. In his career, he's a 32-year-old corner, so he's no spring chicken. He's been around for a long time. Overlapped with Dan Campbell when he was in New Orleans. But he has more sacks in his career than he has interceptions. He has more tackles for loss than he has pass breakups. And he's got 8 quarterback hits in addition to those things. So I could see maybe a little bit more of a kind of a Melifonwu type role where, he blitzed a lot. Not from a safety spot, obviously, but that kind of guy, if they
All right. Well, before we get to the preview, go around the division again real quick. Lions at 4-1. We know they're heading to Kansas City for Sunday Night Football. The Packers do have a winning record. They're 2-1-1. I was thinking they were 2-2-1. So we have faced a team. Well, they didn't have a winning record when we faced them, though. They were 0-0 at that point. They are facing the Joe Flacco Bengals. The Vikings are on a bye this week before they get quite the schedule test a few weeks in a row. And then the Bears put their 2-game winning streak on the line against Washington. And so, Coach, any thoughts on either of those games coming up for the division rivals, or any assessment of our division rivals at this point?
No, I think, we're doing, we say we're the best division, and we're going to find out, especially with the Packers having to face quarterback for the second time, and the Bears going to Washington. So it'll be interesting. But again, we're worried about us getting 1-0 this week.
All right, James, how about you? Any thoughts on division?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty tough line matchup for the Bears with Daniels back. I think with Washington, they're a completely different team with Jaden Daniels in there. The Bengals are still a dangerous team. We'll see how quickly Flacco can adjust. But, maybe with those 2 wide receivers and a quarterback who's maybe a little bit better at getting them the ball, maybe the Bengals offense comes around and has a little bit more life than it did last week until it was kind of too late.
Well, if they have less turnovers than last week, they have a chance, right? I mean, that's the other thing, too. And so I think Joe Flacco is a brilliant move for the Bengals. You got to try something. You probably needed to try it a week ago, but at least you got something in there now. So, I don't know what the spread is on that game, but I expect it to be competitive. And the Bears, we're going to learn a lot about the Bears coming off the bye, coming off their 2-game win streak, and like you said, against Jaden Daniels in Washington. I think we still have a lot to learn about this division yet, and we'll figure that out in the next few weeks. Okay, now it's time for our preview of the upcoming game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Here's my interview with a sports reporter from the CBS affiliate out of Kansas City. Joining me today is sports reporter Katie Marr, part of the KCTV5 sports team out of Kansas City. Katie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk NFL with me today.
Thanks for having me. Always happy to talk with a fellow Terp. So,
Awesome. Well, let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. They're sitting at 2-3 after their loss to Jacksonville, and I don't think that's the start anyone thought they would have record-wise when the season opened up. But each loss has only been by a single score, and so I'm not putting any stock in that early season record. They're still a talented and dangerous Kansas City Chief team to me. So let's start with this big picture. How is this team different than last year?
yeah, I would say coming into this season, I felt like the only ways that they would be different were really in good ways, because I feel like they really did retain most of their star power from the last few years, especially on defense, which defense has kind of become the Chiefs' brand in the last few years, which is really weird when you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, but that has been the case since the 2022 draft class kind of changed everything, with Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis, and then, Chris Jones always leading the way back there. But I felt like offensively they were going to take this huge jump this year, which I believe they have. I mean, the 37 points they scored against a very injury-riddled Baltimore team a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I should say now, is the most they've scored since week 3 of 2023. So I,
Wow.
I was looking at the offense and I was like, I mean, the receiver room, it hasn't been good. Like Mahomes has won a Super Bowl with like Sky Moore, Mecole Hardman, and like just no big name players like that once Tyreek Hill was out of there. So I felt like the receiver room was going to make the biggest difference this year. I also felt like Noah Gray, when Travis Kelce eventually does retire, he's going to step up into that position. And he had a huge year last year. I felt like he was going to take a bigger step this year, which he hasn't yet. Um, but I really did feel like offensively, the Chiefs were going to be a lot better this year. And I think they have been for the most part. Rashee Rice being out for 6 games for sure has hurt them. But already with just 2 weeks of Xavier Worthy being back in the lineup, we've seen the offense start to click again. And yes, Monday's game against the Jaguars was just undisciplined, too many penalties. It just killed them. So I do think like when they started 0-2, like everyone tried to write them off. Everyone in like national media was like, the dynasty is over. And I was like, they're out Xavier Worthy, they're out Rashee Rice, like they're figuring things out. They have a tougher start to their schedule than the second half of their schedule, I'd say. So
All right. I think a lot of people, a lot of national media was saying the same thing about the Lions after the first game of the season. So I think
yeah.
we can relate to that a little bit. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball, though. And let's start with the offensive line because that's kind of what makes everything go. What is the state of the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line? How's that looking?
Much better than last year. Last year, it was like, I felt like all we were talking about was that Patrick Mahomes just running for his life. And then if you watched literally any part of the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes was running for his life in just about every snap that was snapped. And I did kind of, so I did say, in the off season when it kind of came down to we don't really have the cap space to keep Joe Tooney. He's a little bit older, so they let him go. All pro guard there. I knew that letting him go was going to hurt the Chiefs. And I do think it has, but because they've brought in their first round draft pick, Josh Simmons out of Ohio State, he's starting left tackle. And he was the guy right away in training camp. Like there were no debates. It was always him getting the first team snaps. There was no movement around there. So we knew pretty early on that Josh Simmons was going to be the guy at left tackle. And the Chiefs have kind of just been waiting for a franchise left tackle for like years now. It feels like there's been a revolving door at that position to protect Patrick Mahomes' blind side. So I've been really impressed with Josh Simmons so far, actually. If you remember in the Chiefs-Eagles game when the pick in Travis Kelce's hands goes into the hands of an Eagles defender,
Yeah.
goes all the way back, that's a pick six if Josh Simmons doesn't run all the way across the field and tackle the guy out of bounds when no one else could. So I've been really impressed with the rookie so far. Kingsley Suamataia, he's in at left guard, where Joe Tooney used to be, and Joe Tooney was kind of the only reason why the Chiefs even went to the Super Bowl last year, in my opinion, because he was able to step in the left tackle position at some times, even though he's an all-pro guard. Um, I think that Kingsley has done okay. I don't think he was supposed to come in at left tackle last year. That was supposed to be the guy, and then it just wasn't working. So they've been trying him at left guard this year, and that's been his spot all along. And I think it could be a lot worse. It could be a little bit better, but I think he's done a decent job so far. They've got franchise center in Creed Humphrey, franchise right guard in Trey Smith. The right tackle position, it was a little shaky to start with Jawan Taylor getting how many false starts a game? He had his first clean game of the season with no false starts against the Ravens, and continued to also play well against Jaguars, I felt like. So the right tackle position was a little, but it seems like it's getting better. And they acknowledged like Matt Nagy, offensive coordinator, was like, yeah, the false starts are a problem and we've got to fix that. So no one was shy about that. They've all acknowledged like the offensive line, it's continuing to improve. Like it's not a finished product by any means, but like even Patrick Mahomes has said he feels like he has more time back there. He has that extra second to find a guy all the way down the field. So much better than it was last year, which is all we can really ask for at this point.
Well, and I mean, giving Patrick Mahomes more time, it's just a
Yeah.
scary thought to any defense out there. The other
Yeah.
thing that helps the offense or helps Patrick is a running game. The Chiefs are a top 10 team in rushing in the league, and they've got Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. But if you look at the stats, the confusing thing is Patrick Mahomes is the team's leading rusher with 190 yards. So tell me, what's going on there? Is it design stuff? Is it just simply Patrick's making that happen the way he usually has, and they haven't gone to the run as heavily consistently? What's to make of the running game?
They've had some struggles with getting the run game established this year. It's been a talking point. I think it's been a little bit better the last 2, 3 weeks. The first 2 weeks of the season, it was pretty rough. Like Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt were combining for about 35 yards. And then Patrick Mahomes he led the game in rushing. He led the team in rushing yards in the Super Bowl against the Eagles. And then he led the team in rushing yards week 1 and week 2. So after week 2, we were like, Patrick Mahomes has been the team's leading rusher since the Super Bowl. And I think it's kind of half and half. Some of them, I don't really think you ever design Patrick Mahomes to run. That's just kind of when he does his Mahomes magic because he's scrambling and he's, just run all over and kind of doing his thing and trusting his intuition, which is what makes him Patrick Mahomes. So I mean, Patrick Mahomes can use his leg, but first things first, like they don't want him to because he's not Lamar Jackson. And the Chiefs know that when they're designing this scheme. So getting the run game established kind of also goes back to the continually evolving offensive line where, as I said, they're not there yet, but they're getting there. And I mean, we know Isaiah Pacheco can run. We know Kareem Hunt can run. We've seen more flashes of that in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So it's improving. It's a lot better than it was week 1. But they've still got a long ways to go, which it's strange, but at the same time, when you think of where the offensive line was to kind of where they are now, kind of makes sense. But yeah.
All right. Well, let's hit on the passing game then, which is something you've already alluded to. Worthy was hurt out for a couple of games, but he's back. And there just really seems, even with one of the receivers missing, there seems to be a good number of options for Mahomes to throw to. It's not just Travis Kelce and nobody else, which is what it seemed to be like for a few years. What are we making of the wide receiver and tight end group when you combine everything together right now? It seems like this may be his best assortment of options he's had there in a while.
Yeah, this is definitely his best assortment of options since I would say the Legion of Zoom was in Kansas City. And I wasn't even covering the Chiefs at that time. I was in college when that was a thing. I was watching the Super Bowl. I was like a sophomore in college watching the Chiefs win with that. There was a lot of talk in training camp this year of it, like this receiver room is really, really fast. Like Xavier Worthy, record-breaking 40-yard dash time before he was a rookie. So everyone's excited about him. And then Hollywood Brown, he's also known for his speed. And Rashee Rice is fast too. And then they also brought in Tyquan Thornton last year, kind of kept him around, and then fully brought him onto the team, off the practice squad, all that stuff. So Tyquan Thornton actually, even though he's new this year, he's not new to Kansas City because he was here last season learning the system. So he was able to jump in really quickly in training camp, and we saw those early flashes of the deep balls down the field to Tyquan Thornton. So we kind of knew that he was going to be a guy that if the resurgence of the deep ball was going to happen, it was going to be a lot of thanks to Tyquan Thornton, and that's definitely happened so far. He's been coming in clutch with a lot of big plays downfield. But this is certainly the best wide receiver room that Patrick Mahomes has had in a hot minute. And again, that's because of the Chiefs. And, in 2022, they decide, okay, let's revamp our focus to being a little more sound defensively, trading away Tyreek Hill and kind of just waiting for those more talented weapons to come in. They were hurt last year with Rashee Rice being out for the season. They're hurt right now with him being out for 6 games. Xavier Worthy as a rookie, like had a lot of pressure on him last year, I think, and he showed a lot of really good flashes at the end of the season, and then he's kind of been able to just pick up right where he left off with coming back in and just opening up the offense so much. But I mean, all the guys said like once Xavier Worthy was back on the field with them, like it just opens everything up because if he's running all the way downfield, like okay, Mahomes can find Kelsey because then they can't triple team Kelsey, which is what was happening for a while when he was kind of his only target that could catch a football. But yeah, it's much better this year. Tyquan Thornton was kind of people's training camp darling. Jalen Royals, the rookie, was also kind of people's training camp darling. And he's been dealing with some knee pain. So he was out the first few games, kind of getting integrated in special teams now. But Jalen Royals was a lot of times in training camp, when they were practicing for life without Rashee Rice because they kind of figured Rashee Rice was gonna face a suspension. They just didn't know it yet during training camp. We saw Jalen Royals out there with the first teamers getting a lot of those slot throws that would you imagine are going to Rashee Rice typically. So a little surprised we haven't seen him used more. But then another rookie that's come in is Brashard Smith out of SMU. He's been a really good pass catcher, which he comes in as a running back, but he's been a really good threat coming out of the backfield to catch the football. So the offense is clicking. It's got ways to go, and the team acknowledges that. But it's much more enjoyable to watch than it has been the last like 2 years, I'd say.
Well, and Tyquan Thornton might be a name that most Lions fans and a lot of people weren't familiar with. He's like fourth on the team in receptions behind Juju Smith-Schuster, but he's averaging
You didn't
more
even
than
mention
20.
Schuster, yeah.
Right,
He's
right.
still
Didn't
so
mention.
reliable.
But Thornton's averaging more than 20 yards a catch. That's Jamison Williams territory. Lions fans know all about that with big plays. And so, that I guess is another X factor is being able to have the deep ball still there again, because remember how dangerous it was when Tyreek Hill was back there. Not the same speed, but still a deep threat. And Thornton, that's probably opening things up for the tight ends more as well.
Yeah, for sure. And that's always good for Travis Kelce, especially as he's in the later years of his career. And then I mentioned Noah Gray earlier. But I mean, I've taken Noah Gray in my Dynasty Fantasy League because I'm planning for the future where he becomes tight end one after Kelsey eventually retires. Like Noah Gray showed really awesome flashes. He frequently led the team in receptions last season. So he's also a name to watch out for that I'm kind of just waiting to like have a breakout game this season.
All right, well, let's jump over to the defensive side then. A top 10 passing defense. The rush defense, not quite as, prestigiously ranked right now. They're around the middle of the pack, maybe just below the middle. Do those numbers accurately describe the way this defense looks to you when you see them out there playing?
When it comes to the run defense, I typically the Chiefs are pretty solid in their run defense. That probably just, I mean, they've got 3 losses so far, so that definitely has something to do with it. But typically, I mean, Steve Spagnuolo was a defensive mastermind. And when it comes to safeties and defensive backs, like I think back to when Chiefs traded away L'Jarius Sneed, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, like he's the best cornerback in the league. Like, what are they doing? Like and then I was just like, they must be so confident that Trent McDuffie can be that next guy." And he absolutely has been that next guy. And if you watch the game against the Jaguars, he got a pick. He had a crazy good pass breakup. And quarterbacks have just learned don't throw the ball if Trent McDuffie's guarding your guy because your guy's not going to catch it if Trent McDuffie's on him. He's really stepped up as, an all-pro type guy. And he's only in his 3rd year in the league. So yeah, the Chiefs, they have, like I said, flipped that script from being so strong offensively years ago to now they're like this defense first team. Um, it's very rare for the Chiefs to give up more than 20 points a game. And very often when the offense was lagging, it was like well, okay, well, at least our defense only allowed 14 points, so it's okay. But that, that's not going to be the case all the time. They started off this season with a really poor week one performance, and it kind of just kicked them in the butt. I was talking to George Karlaftis in the locker room midweek availability last week, and I just said, like, you're coming off this really great. I mean, Baltimore was one of the top, if not the top offense in the league coming into that week four game, and they held them to 20 points. And I just said, like, what did it take for this team to kind of just get back down to business and get back to who you've been in the last few years? And it was all they all just said, it's the coaching staff. They have a really strong culture, and Steve Spagnuolo knows what he's doing. So he runs a tight ship, and even the rookies, it doesn't take very long for them to buy in to that mentality.
All right, and Karlaftis, 3.5 sacks leads the team. He is making his presence felt. Um,
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. What would you consider the strength to be on the defense right now?
Ooh. Hmm. I'm gonna have to go back to that line and their line. I mean, if you look at their linebacker room, like they've got a crazy little trio of Nick Bolton, Drew Tranquil, and Leo Chanel, who are some of the three best linebackers in the league, in my opinion. Nick Bolton is a guy that no one talks about in like national media. Like when you think of Chiefs defense, you think of Chris Jones. George Karlaftis is kind of starting to get those national nods. Trent McDuffie, kind of a little bit. No one talks about Nick Bolton, which like he's one of the most vocal leaders and veteran leaders on the defense. And I mean, he came up with a crazy stop to stop the Jaguars from getting a touchdown on the goal line just Monday night. So I would say, but it really does start up front. Having Chris Jones and George Karlaftis and those guys that are up there, it starts with them in the trenches, and they know that, and they hold a lot of pride in that. So I would say it starts there because also, when it comes to the secondary, there were some question marks coming in this season with the letting go of Justin Reed, who was another big vocal leader in that secondary. And Trent McDuffie said, that's kind of on me now to step up and do that. So, Trent McDuffie and Brian Cook are definitely holding it up back there. I think the secondary they could have started the season a lot worse. So I've actually been quite impressed that they have started the season as one of the best passing defenses in the league.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. We've talked about all elements of the team. We didn't mention special teams, but if there's something you want to throw in there, you can. What do you think is the most vulnerable position? Because this team seems very good still, as they have for many years in a row. What area is Kansas City the most vulnerable, you think?
I would go back to the run game. It's improved in the last few weeks, but not nearly enough for me to feel comfortable in their ability to run the ball down the field. I mean, they can get within the 5 yard line, and Kareem Hunt can find the end zone super easily. But it's a matter of getting down the field. Like they need to be getting, they need to get their yards per carry average up. Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, it starts with them. I mean, this is like a pass heavy offense because they have Patrick Mahomes, of course, and they don't have they don't have a Saquon Barkley, one of the top running backs in the league back there, but they still do have two very good running backs. For me, that's been the weakness, I would say. The biggest weakness with the team right now is just the fact that, I mean, you got to run the football in the game of football. So they figure it out, but they know it's an issue. So they're working on it, I guess.
All right. Well, if Kansas City is going to win this game against the Lions, what is Kansas City going to have to do to make that happen?
Just bounce back, I think, from this loss on the road, which I mean, Casey gets to play at home, which is they always have a bit of a home field advantage at Arrowhead, loudest stadium in the NFL. I think just not letting this shake them and get back to playing disciplined football because I mean the penalties against the Jaguars it just can't happen, and especially when you have a future Hall of Fame coach like Andy Reid at the helm and usually a pretty disciplined team. There were just a lot of issues and on special teams as well. I mean, they had a 64-yard kick return that got taken back because of a block in the back by Jack Cochran, and then he had another penalty later in the game as well. Harrison Butker is some people are calling for cut Butker. I don't think we should be at that point just yet. I think he's just and special teams coordinator Dave Tobe has also admitted like Yeah, he's having some issues right now. Mental, mental whatever that is. It happens with kickers. He just got to get out of that. He always says that Bucker has a really good next kick up mentality. So just watching the last kick as soon as it happened. But they've special teams, I think, definitely has some stuff to figure out there, which hasn't always been the case there. So we're hoping maybe just one game, it was just a bunch of mishaps all over the field. Um, but really, I think it just is shaking this loss. I maybe it was, oh, they won two straight games after starting 0-2. They came in too confident, got off to a really good start in the game, being up 14 nothing. You never know. I mean, obviously, I'm not on the sideline. I don't hear what's going on in their team huddles and in the locker room and all that. I think it really just comes down to bouncing back. When it comes to the Lions, I mean, they know the Lions are one of the best teams in the NFL, just like them. They both have been that in the last few years. I honestly thought last year the Super Bowl was going to be Chiefs and Lions. I tweeted that out before the start of the season, and that aged poorly. Dang it. But
Well,
I
rarely does a quote like that age well, right? I mean, it's tough. Yeah.
But like I said, I think this is going to be a really good game as well. Being in prime time, Patrick Mahomes typically plays really well in prime times. He's 17-2, I believe, in primetime games. Or is that Monday Night Football games? Saw that stat somewhere.
Yeah.
But he typically plays well. I think they're going to be a little bit angry, and that's probably a good thing because it's probably what powered them to getting the week 3 and then eventually week 4 win. So it's going to be a really good game, though, and I'm super excited for it.
Yeah. Good if you're a Kansas City fan that they're angry. But the
Yeah.
Lions, on the other hand, they are 1.5 point underdogs coming into this game. If the Lions are going to leave Arrowhead with a win, what do the Detroit Lions need to do in order to be successful in this game?
I think they've got to just come in offensively strong because the Chiefs defense really just does have that mindset about them. Like if we just don't let more than 20 points get on the board, we're probably going to win this game. So I think it'll come down to how well the offense can operate for the Lions. But that's not to say that they don't have a strong defense too. Obviously they do. They've been known for that for the last few years, and Mahomes and the guys are going to know that. So if the Lions are going to come in and upset everybody at Arrowhead, I think it's just going to come down to getting the best of the defense, which isn't easy to do, but as we know, it's very possible. So,
All right. Katie, any predictions, any final thoughts, anything I haven't asked you that you'd like to share?
ooh, like a score prediction.
If you want to, any prediction of any sort.
All right. I think the Chiefs get a bounce back win, but I think it's going to be very close. I think it's going to be a 3-point game. I'm going to go somewhere around like 30-27 Chiefs. I think it'll be decided by a field goal.
And so you think Butker is going to get those mental things worked out and possibly come through on something?
Yeah, I think honestly, a lot of times the field goals he's okay. It's the extra points that he's messing up, which
We've
is
seen that a
crazy.
few times in the NFL this year.
Yeah,
So awesome. Katie, thank you so much for your insights on the Kansas City Chiefs and taking the time to talk NFL football with me as we lead up to the Detroit Lions Kansas City Sunday night football game.
thanks for having me. I'm excited for the game.
Again, that was sports reporter Katie Marr, part of the KCTV5 sports team out of Kansas City with all those insights. Okay, guys, now it's our turn. What are we going to make out of this Kansas City Chiefs team so far? Let's start on offense, guys. The Chiefs have solid rushing numbers, but as I brought up in my interview with Katie, it's somewhat unorthodox in how they get to those numbers. So, James, why don't you start us off telling us what you found about that, and then I want to hear Coach talk a little bit about it as well.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes was their leading rusher last week. Actually, both quarterbacks were the leading rushers for their team in that game. Trevor Lawrence led the Jags too. But I mean, that sounds bad, when your quarterback is your leading rusher, and isn't a guy like Lamar Jackson or, that it runs a lot. But I mean, oddly, they ran for 7.2 yards a game, or a carry, last week. But they only ran it 22 times. They were running it that effectively and only ran it 22 times, 6 of which were from Mahomes. So really only 16 designed run plays in the whole game, and they ran 60 some plays. So it's kind of oddly the run game is oddly productive. People, especially in the fantasy community, are very unhappy with Isaiah Pacheco. I've got him on a team or two, and like, come on, let's get this going. But I mean, him and Kareem Hunt each only had 7 carries last week. Xavier Worthy had one on a reverse, and rookie Brashard Smith had one. Um, so it is of note that those 3 running backs had 7 catches between them, though, too. So they're adding in other ways. But yeah, Pacheco is averaging 4.2 a carry this season, but has less carries than Hunt, who's only averaging 3.8. So it's just kind of odd. Mahomes has 190 yards, Hunt has 164, and Pacheco 163 for the
Yeah.
season. So it's kind of a three-headed monster in their run game. Um, but it's just kind of odd because everybody's been kind of bagging on the Chiefs for having this anemic run game, and it's really not. They just don't use it as much as people would like.
Yeah, Coach, what are you seeing out of the Chiefs offense, starting with the running side, and then if you want to transition into the passing side, there's some interesting stuff going there.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is, I mean those first couple games, I watch the Chiefs, as much as I can because he's kind of a fan of their quarterback and their coaching staff, and it was amazing at how much Patrick was running in those games, how much he was trying to will the win because they didn't have their wide receiver, their guys, because Pacheco wasn't getting loose. So I think that's one of the biggest things that it was pretty amazing. The first touchdown they had against the Jags on Monday Night Football was basically an RPO or a quarterback keep. I can't even think he looked for pass, but he faked out inside zone and he carried it into the end zone. So they're using his legs more. You used to see that more in the playoff games where that's when he would turn it loose. During the regular season games, it always seemed like he was playing to win, but not to get hurt. Now he's just playing to win and doesn't care if he gets hurt. So I think there's some interesting things there. Surprising that surprising their run game isn't better than it usually is. But I think one of the things. Let's go back to Taylor. Taylor's got 7 penalties already, that left tackle. I'm going to bring that up because that's probably putting them into more of those passing situations where he has to look better. What you would call it, slow down a little bit. Kelsey slowed down a little bit. I saw a thing. He's only coming 11. He's only coming off the ball 11 miles an hour now. Where last year, in his prime, he was coming off at 13.4 miles an hour. I love that stuff. I mean, I can get in that all day. We can talk for 5 hours. But anyways, but so that's just showing some of those things. He's become more of that first down guy. There's some good stuff right there. But I think it's the Pacheco's not getting in. Pacheco's one of those guys, that if he can get his feet going, when he looks like his feet are on fire, and he gets an initial push, he's gonna run some guys open or spin out of tackles in the open field. But I don't think he's getting past the line of scrimmage quick enough, and he's running into a tough defense for that this week.
Yeah, and we talk about Patrick Mahomes. We don't have to say much about him because we know how good he is and what he does. He continues to just be the standard, the gold standard in the NFL. Well, they don't have to rely as much on the run because it's not just Travis Kelce. And if he is, in fact, a mile and a half slower than he was in the past, well, he's got some help out there, so maybe he doesn't have to carry quite so much, right? James, they've got some speed in the wide receiving room for the Kansas City Chiefs. And there's a number of guys, some household names and some maybe not, but this is one of the better receiving cores the Chiefs have had in the last couple of years. You have to go back to probably when they had Tyreek Hill to think that they had a receiving core this talented. What are you seeing out of the Kansas City Chiefs receiving core right now?
Yeah, it's kind of like the Packers have been the last couple of years, and where you have 4 really good receivers, and you can't tell from one week to another who's going to be the lead dog. So it's just a matter of playing matchups and who's got the hot hand. You've got Hollywood Brown has 257 yards, Tyquan Thornton 272, Kelsey 243, Worthy has 125, but he's missed 2 games, and then Juju Smith-Schuster 168. So they don't have that one go-to guy, especially without Rashee Rice, because he's that guy, and he'll be back next week. So luckily the Lions miss him by 1 week from his suspension. So, and you go into the game with a game plan of not knowing who to concentrate on defense, as far as the receivers. So you maybe play a little bit more generic of a coverage thing because you're not like leaning your coverage to one guy or the other. It's not like you're playing Justin Jefferson and you're like, okay, well, we got to give some safety help. So it's just kind of a little bit of a pick your poison thing, not because you've got four all pros, but because you got four good receivers who you don't know who's going to get the ball.
Yeah, and so that gives them a lot of weapons to throw to out there, and it's going to probably, the Lions have obviously been studying that offensive scheme, and I'm sure they're going to bring some very unique packages or whatnot. We'll talk about that because with the top two defensive backs out, that will create some challenges. Before we get into what the Kansas City is going to do versus the Lions and vice versa, let's look at the Chiefs' defensive side of the ball, Coach. They are actually a top 10 team against the pass and middle of the road against the rush. And when I spoke to the reporter out of Kansas City, she said that the rush defense is actually better than those numbers describe, in her opinion, based on what she has seen. What are you making of this Kansas City defense overall, and how difficult of a matchup? Well, what are you making of them overall?
Well, I mean, they're a good team. I mean, let's talk about this. The Lions offense is fourth DVOA, where the Chiefs defense is 15th, and I think that hurts because of some of the run concept. The DVOA, I don't know if you guys know exactly what that is. It's a huge statistical data thing. But if you gain 5 yards on, I'm just throwing an example. If you gain 5 yards on 1st and 10, okay, and you gain 5 yards on 2nd and 5, that 5 yards on 2nd and 5 is worth more, basically more points. So the
Yeah.
DVOA is taking all ingredients into plays. So when you talk about that, the Lions fourth and the Chiefs 15th, that tells you, it's a big difference right there. Some of the things I picked up a thing on, and I'm going to kind of talk about Chris Jones. He's a D tackle, right?
Yep.
And the DN Charles was it Awune, something like that. And he's a DN, but in passing situations they flip spots. Okay, because they want to bring Jones Smith. So, anyways, the reason I'm talking about that is that may be why they're maybe some people are seeing that, doing that, and maybe they're attacking more outside run concepts, in early downs, and then more inside pass concepts during later downs or chipping or whatever and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's just it's kind of cool to see that. And then Karlaftis and Jones. Karlaftis has 27 pressures, and Jones has 14. That's all they have for double-digit pressures this season. Two guys. And Karlaftis is a friggin' linebacker that's basically coming off the edge in Spags' defense. So, Spags' defense is a pressure defense, multiple zones and stuff like that. So he's trying to create a turnover, or if you get down to the 10-yard line, he's got so much stuff coming at you, you're gonna have a problem, breaking through it. So that's kind of what I think the big thing is could be the change of those guys. Their linebacking core is they're tough, they're good.
Yeah.
I don't think as good as us. I'm going to say that again. They're not as good as us, but boy, they got some Tranquil's a dog, and those they love to hit you, and Bolton, and so. But I think it could be because of that, and it could be because of the way Spags concept is too. He's going to stop the big play and try to create turnovers and not worry about the muddle stuff in the middle.
All right. Well, then what do we expect out of Kansas City against the Lions? Well, I think the first thing we're going to expect is a very, very angry and hungry team. They're 2-3 right now. If they lose this game, that puts them at 2-4. That will likely put them 2 games out of their division lead, as Denver and the Chargers are each 3-2. If one of them win, it's a 2-game thing. So, and I'm sure they just have a bad taste in their mouth after everything that happened on Monday night. James, we'll start with you. Then I want to hear from Coach. James, what are you expecting out of the Chiefs?
Well, they're coming off a short week because they played on Monday Night Football, so that's one slight advantage that the Lions get. But their defense is still very good. They're healthier on defense than the Lions are at this point. They have game changers on defense, like Coach mentioned, Chris Jones, Karlaftis, Trent McDuffie at corner is very good, and then that linebackers of Bolton, Tranquil, and Leo Chenal. it rivals the Lions. Like Coach said, I don't think it's better than Lions, but it rivals the Lions linebackers. But only Karlaftis and Tranquil have more than one sack out of that team. They're kind of like the Lions too, where they're getting pressures, but they're not getting home and getting the sack. So a lot of similarities. Obviously their corners are healthier than ours. But other than that, their defense is pretty darn good. Their offense has scored on 51% of their drives this season, scored touchdowns on 51% of
Wow.
their drives. That's higher than any of the last 3 years, which they went to the Super Bowl all three. And their offensive line has been dynamite this season. They made those trades where they traded Tooney to the Bears and they drafted some guys and they've worked out. So they're a formidable team, for sure. The only former Lion on the team, ironically, is Broderick Martin, who is on their practice squad,
That's right.
and they did elevate him once this season for the Ravens. So, but he did not get any tackles in that game.
Be interesting to see if they elevate him this week against his former team, and or if what they've asked him or what they've used with him to help prepare. Coach, what are you expecting Kansas City to try and do against the Lions in this game? What's
Well,
their plan of attack?
percentage wise, I'm going to throw some percentage at you, what I think they do, and which I think one of these is going to tie into why the run game is they're not doing well against the run game. James just said it. 38.8% of plays they generate pressure with a forefront, which is the third highest. Okay, the Chiefs use an aggressive approach. This is what I thought was pretty cool. Okay, early downs they blitz at 34.8%, the seventh highest. Early downs, and then with their second down blitz rate of 39.7. So that's almost 40% of the time they're blitzing on that second down. So is that where they're getting hit with their runs? Are they a concept? I'll tell you a thing I picked up because watching the Jags game the other night. I think I told you about it. Lawrence came to the line of scrimmage. It was perfectly quiet because it was a home game, and they lined up those two backers basically about 3-4 yards deep, but lined up right in the A gap. And Lawrence yelled, duel, 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 check, 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 because those guys were both coming through A gap. There was no doubt he knew exactly when they were blitzing. Kansas City tried to check out of it, and they ran for. I think they ran out. Probably I think it was an outside zone for probably 4, 5, 6 yards. So that's the thing that ties into what we had just talked about earlier. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And again,
And Jared Goff's pretty good against the blitz.
And Jared Goff is really good. Now he's not going to be able to do it because the Kansas City's going to be really, really, really loud. But the guy is really, really good at it, and we got that mess figured out after week 1. So I think we're in pretty good shape there. The other thing is they've run zone, 71.7% zone coverages on dropbacks.
Oh.
71.7%. It ranks inside the top 12. So I went through and I looked at Goff. Okay, so Goff, because everybody's about what he does against man-to-man. And so Goff this year is 82 for 108 attempts, 910 yards, and 6 touchdowns against zone.
Yeah.
And he is, I think, by far the best quarterback today's game that reads coverages and reads zones and reads schemes and throws receivers open better than anybody. Okay. And I know he can't run like Lamar or Allen, but
especially if they're playing zone, he's not going to be able to run because the defensive backs won't have their back to him. So he might not get more than 5 or 6 yards rushing.
Yes. So I think that's something, thinking about that blitz concept. So that's a good point. Thinking about that blitz concept, that's going to be kind of tying to see how the Lions are going to do because they do have a tough time. So I think they're running more run blitzes instead of, and maybe trying to catch somebody because the NFL.
Oh yeah.
The NFL, first down they get 2 yards, second down they run, third down. Well, the good teams don't, but so I think that's what they're doing with it. So also I went back and looked at the 2023 game. Right? Was that last time we played them?
Yep, 2 years ago, opener.
2 years ago, and Jared Goff, and that was a great game. We were kind of young, we weren't as talented as we are now, but Goff had thrown 35 passes in that game, and 20 of those passes, 20 of those 35 were in the middle of the field. Okay. And that was like 2 or 3 screen plays behind the line of scrimmage. Okay. So why I'm bringing that up, second down blitzes with inside linebackers are coming downhill. We're going to throw the screen in, in behind those guys as they're coming. And then we had short and medium, no deep balls that. So I thought that was interesting. And he was 17 for 20 in those stats. So I think I know there's a lot of numbers and stuff there, but looking at those things, is our screen game going to come back with more of the in middle screen game because of those second down blitzes? And I'm sure the Lions have all these stats and probably way more than what I have to exactly figure out how we're going to attack that defense.
All right. Well, I've got one more stat for you. 20% off. That's what you can get off Roaster Jack coffee if you use the code LIONS. They're out of Traverse City, Michigan. They've been roasting since 1999, folks. Again, roasterjack.com. Use the code LIONS. You get 20% off. All right, Coach. Now we got to see what we're going to expect out of the Lions in this game. And I went into your scouting report, Coach, and I think you hit on something with Mahomes right there. The defensive secondary is going to be tested in this game. Probably the most obvious thing, knowing that both of our defensive backs are out and knowing that they've got the receiving core that they have. I am expecting the Lions to play a variety of schemes and change things up, but I think the linebackers are going to be key in this game. Because, Coach, you brought up a stat on Mahomes and what he's done, and he has 2 interceptions this year. Those 2 interceptions have come on short passes, which means linebackers probably got involved or could get involved. In fact, most of Mahomes' passes, according to your scouting report here, are of the shorter variety. 9 yards or less is 44% of his stuff. And that right there is where our linebacking core is poised to have an impact. Is that what you're seeing, Coach?
Oh, for sure. Lloyd, 96 yard, right? 96 yard interception return the other night. He baited him. He came in there. Here, and off of that, let's talk about Holmes is throwing quick passes 2.5 seconds this season. Okay. So he's throwing more. He's still throwing some deeper balls. Now that he's getting Worthy and those guys back, he's throwing more deeper balls. From that, but he's doing a lot of those dump downs because he didn't have his receivers. He's doing the little dump down to Kelsey and I can't remember the other tight end's name. And so they're doing that
Noah
stuff.
Gray.
Yes, thank you, Noah Gray. And they're trying to do that. So I think that's why he's going short on those. And then he's trying to turn in those runs. I think he'll try to pick that up a little bit, but I hope he does try to throw the ball down deep a little bit more because we played cover 2 last game. 50% of the time we had 2 high safeties. That's the most we've ever done. And I think in 2023, one of our safeties had a pick 6 against Mahomes. Mr.
First one of his career.
Yeah, and we have the best safety that has the most interceptions in the last more interceptions in this time of his career than everybody except Ed Reed. He was pretty good safety. So anyways, going back to what you said, and then I cannot wait to watch Alex Anzalone and Kelsey square up. I cannot wait. This is going to be, I am probably going to have every angle I can find and just watch that, any passing downs, because I want to see Anzalone, and he'll abuse them. And Kelsey's great. And Kelsey's going to get mad and frustrated, probably chest bump Andy Reid, throw his helmet, and smash Taylor's new album that she just made. But I can't wait for that. And I love Kelsey, don't get me wrong, but this is going to be a fun matchup.
It really is. James, let's say on the defensive side of the ball here with the Lions, what are you expecting out of the Lions in this one?
It'd be interesting to see what they do at corner, how aggressive they are. Are they gonna be more man or zone because of the changes? The front 7, I think we know pretty much what they're gonna do. With Ali McNeil, they're gonna have 3 really, really good defensive tackles to roll in there, plus Lopez, plus a guy who I didn't see on the injury report this week in Wingo. So I think he's going to be back this week too. So they're going to be really deep on the D line this week, and they're just going to be rolling guys in and out. I think on the D line to keep fresh guys in, wear those tackles down.
So you think McNeil's going to play this week, even though because he's a full practice, but you're expecting him to play? Because I think they're going to keep him out a week or two yet.
I wouldn't be surprised if they do.
Mhm.
But if they put him in there and they roll those three tackles, they can limit his snaps, but
Sure.
still keep guys fresh. Regardless of if he's back, they're going to have at least four D tackles to rotate in there. If he's back, they have five. They're going to rotate the ends around. They're going to do all that kind of stuff and just try to keep those tackles tired. To try to get three or four false starts from Jawan Taylor. They're going to point out the thing with him leaving early, um, and just try to prevent those tight ends from burning them. Their third tight end is a guy who you probably are both familiar with, Robert Tonyan from the Packers.
Oh, yeah. Did not realize he was on their team.
I didn't either until just this week.
Till now.
Yeah.
Hey,
Well, yeah.
go ahead. A couple other things I forgot I wanted to mention, and I was just thinking about Debo. I forgot. The one stat I was thinking about with Pacheco running, the Lions are at 6.9% defenses and missed tackle rate, lowest in the NFL. Okay,
Nice.
6.9%. That's unbelievable. So that's how good our linebackers are. Let's go back to Mahomes' deep throws. Why have they been short? Guys, he has had 12 overthrows this year. It leads the league where he's overthrown the ball 12 times.
Wow.
And so I think I can't remember who the other one was, number two. So 12 of those. So it's not like they haven't attempted them. I mean, it's
Right.
it's only about three, but he's had 12 overthrows where he's just lying. So I think those are things that he's going to try to rectify, and I think it's going back to that us running two high safeties last week. It'll be interesting, and so it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, and I love that Trey Flowers is going to have a whole week of reps under his belt going into this game because they're going to be rotating him into that game likely with Rock Ya-Sin and Amik Robertson being the starters just to kind of keep guys fresh. So from the secondary, I think that's big. And going back with the linebackers, I want to hear both of your guys' thoughts on this. I can't help but think they might do a spy thing again on Mahomes the way they did on Lamar. Now, he's not the same type of running threat. He's very different, but that linebacker can drop into coverage and can go back up towards the line because Mahomes is the leading rusher for the team. We got to remember that, James. And so I wouldn't be shocked if and maybe they're not going to call it a spy. Maybe it's a hybrid spy, where sometimes they spy, sometimes they don't. But I think these linebackers are going to be the biggest key on the defense. Well, actually, they're all going to be a key because the front guys got to get home in order to help the secondary out. But what are some of your thoughts on that or anything else on the defense before we move to offense?
Yeah, I think it's very possible that they use somebody like Barnes as kind of a spy. They did that a couple weeks ago, and it worked pretty decently. When they played the Ravens, I think they used a spy. I think it was almost one-third of the time on their defensive snaps. So I could totally see them doing that again. I mean, Mahomes has run for I think 14 first downs this year, which also leads their team. So I mean, that's the thing is he can just move the chains with his legs too. So I can totally see them doing that.
Yeah. And Coach, people have been saying the last couple of weeks, I can't believe the Lions haven't gone for it more. They're punting the ball at midfield on 4th and 3. Those last two games, I mean, every game is based on its opponent. Well, the last 2 weeks, the Lions were a little bit more conservative because the opponents didn't have very good offenses. So we played the field game thing, right? And knowing you weren't going to have to really outscore them, you said to out-defend them in many respects. I think it's going to be a little bit different. I think it's going to see how the game goes, but we know we're up against a much more potent quarterback than we faced the last couple of weeks. You're going to see something. Then again, Dan Campbell's investing. He's not scratching lottery tickets here. He's not gambling. He's calculated risking, right? And so I think on the offensive side of the ball, we're going to see a little bit more of that this week. What are you thinking you're going to see out of the Lions offense going into this game?
Well, I think you got I think you're going to still again establish that run. We're going to see a lot of quick passes and stuff because of their pressures that they can do with the front four. I think we're going to manipulate them and put them into situations they don't like to be in. I'm going to tell you, we have not, again, we have not run an extra offensive lineman all year.
That's
did.
your point.
Yes. We ran, remember, 13 personnel. We had 3 tight ends. Now you got 3 receiving guys, and but Skipper has got signed, and I'm just that to offset a defense like the Chiefs would be put 6 offensive linemen out there and 2 tights and go run 22 or something like that personnel, and you're gonna withstand that. You can chip on Chris Jones because he's gonna be upset with all the negative press he got. Oh my God! Why did people just be quiet? Don't make that giant mad, because he's good, and so I think you're going to see. I think we're going to see that. I just think the Skipper thing coming up isn't as much, and I think Skipper was banged up too a little bit. You guys, that may be why we never.
He was
50. Okay, but my thing is, I'm thinking that extra old lineman was Skip. Or, and still some 13 to offset them, and we can still throw the ball to all those tight ends as well as our wideouts. So
yeah, and when you put an offensive lineman next to Manu, that's a little bit more help than a tight end next to Manu, and that's going to play a big difference, not just in the pass protection, but in the running game too. And so that's exactly it, Coach. You were talking about that, getting more guys up there, and you said it. We haven't run with 6 offensive linemen. That 6 guy, we did that a lot last year.
60, I think 67, 50. I can't remember the number, but
yeah.
And what's the best way to stop Patrick Mahomes? Keep him on the bench.
Exactly.
Right? And so I think I just think that's something that there's, and again, you said it earlier, James, as we've said it a million times, there's always calculated risk. There's always analytics involved. And Dan Campbell and those guys are masters at doing that stuff, and I'm looking forward to seeing Skipper reported eligible. I can't wait.
All right, James, anything you want to talk about on the offensive side before we jump to your ref report?
Well, I think one thing is Jerry kind of alluded to it a little bit on defense. One thing that the Chiefs do is they kind of play a shell defense where they're trying to protect the boundary, they're trying to protect the deep ball, and they're a little vulnerable in the middle. So I think you'll see the Lions try to attack that, and of course Amon-Ra St. Brown is great over the middle of the field. Sam Laporta, Brock Wright, all those guys, and maybe get the running backs out there too. But that's just one of those tendencies of Spags' defense is leaving the middle of the field open a little bit.
All right. Take us into the ref report, James.
They got Craig Rolstad, somebody who they didn't have last year at all. The last time that they had him was in the wild card game against the Rams. So in that game, penalties weren't really much of a big deal. Ironically, the Chiefs were called for 13 penalties last week against the Jags for 109 yards, and the Jags only got 4. That's been a big criticism by the Chiefs' own fans this year, is that they are very undisciplined and sloppy and creating a lot of turnovers. In fact, they've had over 70 yards of penalties in 3 of 5 games this year. The Lions have not had 70 in any game this season so far. The Rolstad thing, they one thing they call a lot or a lot more than they have in the past is roughing the passer. They've called that 5 times already this season. They had 5 last year, 4 the year before that, and 5 the year before that. So they've already called as much as they've called in any of the last 3 seasons on roughing the passer. And that Patrick Mahomes begs for those calls and a lot of times gets them. So there is that. The Chiefs have been whistled for 42 penalties. The Lions only 32 so far this season. So that is pretty good. The Rolstad crew kind of is pretty even on home and away calls. And, in that wild card game against the Rams, there was only 9 penalties in that game. So not a big deal when the last time they had him. 5 on Detroit, 4 in LA, only 70 yards. So not even any huge game-changing penalties, really.
All right. Well, now thank you for all that deep dive into that information, James. Let's take a look and see, what do we think it's going to take for the Lions to win? Well, first off, I'm going to go with they're going to need to make adjustments. against Kansas City. But to quote Dan Campbell, they still got to, and again, paraphrasing, folks, they still got to play Detroit Lions football because Coach Campbell said you can't go away from your identity. You still have to be you when going against this other team. So I think it's going to take that from the Lions. I think if they can get a pass rush with 4 and can drop 7 into coverage, that would be great. Or if they send that 5th or 6th guy, they got to run fast. They got to get there. And going along with that stat Coach threw out earlier, solid tackling. Keep that up so some guy doesn't turn a 7-yard gain into a 50-yard gain. So I think that's what's going to take for the Lions to win. Coach, what are some of the things you're seeing?
Well, I think the big one is Mahomes not to make one of his circus plays. We can't allow Mahomes to make a circus play. The one where he's getting tackled and he throws it. He does a 360 in the air and bounces it off his forehead and it hits off a guy's shoulder and somebody catches it. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. He's those circus plays. So with that spy technique, basically they did with Lamar Jackson. It's a spy by design where whoever, if he ends up here, that outside linebacker is coming down. If he comes in the middle, inside linebacker, Trevor, Barnes, so on and so forth. So I think that's the biggest one there. One of the other ones, we have to get the pressure, but those pressures have to turn into sacks to get him off his game. And a quick matchup off of that, Hutch is going 50-50 left side, right side. We know they have the penalty king on one side, and they have Josh Simmons, the rookie on the other side, who's only given up 5.7% pressures in 5 weeks. 5.7% of all pressure drop back Josh Simmons. So it's Hutch and excuse me, and Muhammad and whoever plays that end spot. We have to get home with more. We don't need 7 sacks like we did against Lamar, but we need 4 massive sack hits on Mahomes to get him off his game.
All right, James, what are you thinking here as far as what it's going to take for the Lions to win?
The Lions offense is going to have to be patient and take little chunks and be okay with that and put together long drives. Against Spagnuolo's defense, you can do that. If you start getting too greedy, you're going to throw interceptions. That's kind of what it's geared for, is to not give up the big play and to create turnovers, to force you to do a long drive where you have to execute on 12 plays in a row to get down there and score. So the Lions are going to have to do that. I think that's something they totally can do, with Laporta, St. Brown, all those kind of guys. But they're going to have to be patient. They can't get greedy. I don't think you're going to see deep throws to Jameson Williams. It just goes right into the strength of that defense, unless they do some kind of trick play and then just run him behind or something. I don't think you're going to see deep stuff to Jameson Williams.
Yeah, and so in some ways it might mimic that defense of what the Green Bay Packers try and do, where they're trying to keep everything in front. And the Lions, they did it well against Baltimore. They didn't do too bad against Green Bay. They just couldn't finish once they got down the field, and that was the difference maker in that one. So great observation right there. Okay, let's move to prediction time. Lions are underdogs in this game. Right now it's 2.5-point underdogs. I'm going to predict a very close game. I'm going to predict that the Lions run for 100 yards as a team and that Goff throws for 250 yards in this game. And the Kansas City Chiefs have only allowed one guy, Justin Herbert, to throw for 318 yards. Otherwise, the next most yardage thrown was Trevor Lawrence for 221 on Monday night. And James, it goes back to what you said. In order for that to happen, it's not going to likely be the deep pass to J-Mo. It's going to be those multiple completions moving down the field 10, 15 yards at a time on long sustained drives. So that's going to be my prediction for the game. James, what do you have for a prediction?
Given the middle of the field thing with their kind of shell defense, I think Sam Laporta is going to have a big day. 7-8 catches, 80 or 90 to 100 yards. So I think that there's going to feed him. Amon-Ra St. Brown will obviously get his as well. But Sam Laporta is going to be in line for a big day.
All right. And Coach, how about you? What are any of your predictions?
Okay, here's my prediction. They have a weak safety. His name is Connor. Okay. He's got a weak safety. I'm going to predict that JMO is going to have a big touchdown and it's going to cover a lot of yards. But the way they're going to run it is Saint's going to run the deep route and run the safeties off. JMO's going to run a dig route underneath it and catch the ball in the middle and take it to the house.
All right. I like the creativity on that one.
And if it works and they don't run it, then maybe they'll, never mind. You know what I'm saying.
I do.
That's
I do know what you're saying.
Yep.
As we hit final thoughts, I want to let you know that Dan Campbell today was asked about the NFL report that the Lions submitted to the NFL about investigating people blocking Hutchinson Lowe, reported by Adam Schefter and then brought out by many other people after that. I think we even talked about that report. Dan Campbell said that was bogus. The Lions never filed such a thing. And so just want to put that out there. You heard that from the head coach of the Detroit Lions. He said he doesn't know where that came from or how it got legs. So, all right. Final thoughts. Any last comments here, James, before we get out of here?
No, I think we've exhausted what we have. Although Jerry, I think, has about 20 more pages of stuff.
Here. I agree. You and I have exhausted. Coach, we're going to send everybody over to YouTube to check you out after on a separate channel, and you'll just stream live and read them their bedtime stories.
I'll post some films tomorrow. So.
Oh, that'll be great. Yes, look for films from Coach for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. A shout out to Roaster Jack Coffee, roasted incredible beans since 1999. If you visit roasterjack.com, you use the code LIONS, it will get you 20% off that order. So go ahead and make that order today. Please tell your friends and family about the show. Find us on social media as well as all major streaming platforms. Love to hear your thoughts. Love those reviews. Check out more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.